OG Anunoby is known for his defense, but it's the changes in his offense this season that's making a huge difference towards the Toronto Raptors. So, what exactly is he doing differently that's allowing him to break out like this? Let's get into it. This is Amateur Sports, the YouTube channel that is completely dedicated to providing you with Toronto Raptors content, whether it be in videos just like this or live stream watch-alongs and even some added YouTube shorts. If you like what you see from today's video, make sure you have hit that like button, smash that like button. We had a huge support on the previous video. Let's make sure we have it again here. Liking the video makes a huge difference to that YouTube algorithm, and subscribe to the channel for more of this great Raptors content. It's been a wonderful season so far from OG Anunoby on the defensive end, but we knew that was going to be the case. It's the offensive end where it feels as though OG is finally making the step, but it's not quite the step that Raptors fans have been predicting for the last few years. It's coming a little bit differently, and it's something to do with the way OG Anunoby is changing the way he's trying to get his points on the offensive end, and it's part of the way he's being used in this new offensive system by head coach Darko Rajakovic. But the defensive side of the game, my goodness, is that still there, and it was fully on display as the Raptors defeated the Dallas Mavericks and Luka Doncic. OG was provided the primary assignment to play against Doncic, and though Doncic had a good night from a point standpoint, from an assist and rebound standpoint, that's just something you're going to have to live with when it comes to a player of Luka Doncic's caliber. But when you hold him to 11 of 26 shooting from the field, when you make it an incredibly frustrating night for the player, that is a win for the Raptors, and it was a victory for the Raptors in this game as well. 127 to 116. If it wasn't for some maybe suspect calls going Dallas's way, the Raptors would have absolutely blown the doors off the Mavericks. It was a dominant display in the win, and OG Anunoby was rewarded with the performance by getting the Raptors chain to signify from the head coach that he was the performer of the night for the Raptors. And yes, he put on an outstanding show on defense against Doncic and the Mavericks, which highlights once again a possible defensive player of the year candidacy for the forward. But what was also impressive about this performance was his very efficient 26 points, and OG was doing it all in so many different ways on offense, whether it be in the half court or whether it be in the transition game, where Darko and the Raptors put a much higher focus on playing with an elevated pace. That caters to a lot of people, including OG Anunoby, and certainly made the biggest difference in the Raptors winning this game. But OG as a whole on the season is producing some outrageous numbers. We talked about Scottie Barnes and his individual statistics this season and how great they've been. Well, let's not ignore the numbers being displayed here by OG Anunoby. So far this season, he's averaging just under 18 points per game at 17.6. And what's even more impressive about these numbers is the shooting. 55.3% shooting from the field, just under 42% shooting from three. Like, just ridiculous levels of efficiency for a player like OG Anunoby. But on top of that, of course, you've got some defensive metrics as well. OG Anunoby on the defensive end is averaging 1.1 steals per game, 0.7 blocks, and also, hey, he's adding in 4.3 rebounds per game. So the difference for OG this season has certainly been the efficiency, and it has been the scoring. And the efficiency comes down to certain decision-making factors that I have been screaming for from OG for years now at this point. We're finally seeing them come into practice, and it's making the change that this Raptors offense need. Because the Raptors, they need a player like OG. This team, I've spoken about it already this season, the Raptors offense lacks floor spacing, but where the floor spacing needs to come from is the specific players who are really good at shooting, one of those being OG Anunoby. We always known he's been an incredible knockdown shooter, especially from the corners. That's going to be massive for this team, but we're just leaning into it a little bit more. It feels as though OG threes aren't the product of a broken play where we have to kick out and hope somebody can hit a three. It feels as though these plays for OG on the outside are coming a lot more often by design for this team. That has added a little bit of a step to the team from an offensive standpoint. And the reason this is such a game-changing sort of player is because there's such a limited amount of floor spacers here. So if it's not OG hitting those threes this season, well, it feels like nobody is really going to be hitting those threes. So the fact that he has been dialed in from the outside has allowed just that additional bit of space for the likes of Scottie Barnes, and in particularly in the game against the Mavericks, Pascal Siakam, who was feasting in his one-on-one matchups on the inside and absolutely feasting in his post-up opportunities. OG Anunoby's floor spacing, as much as the spacing lacks in this team, what he provides is essential for the way the Raptors want to play offense. And in games where he has an unfortunate or a tough night from three, you really see the differences it makes towards the Raptors' interior game and interior presence, and just how much more difficult that becomes. But what's actually changed for OG here? Because we knew he could play defense. We knew he could shoot threes. Well, I'll tell you what's changing. It's OG getting downhill and getting to the rim. And unfortunately, this is a bit of a part of OG's game where it's just not as strong. It's the handles. It's the shot creation, especially in those mid-range sort of spaces and getting to the rim. OG just isn't quite adept enough with his handles to consistently rely on it to get himself his offensive game going. So yes, there's a catch and shoot threes, but not as much off the dribble. It's mostly standstill shooting from three. And on the inside, well, the mid-range game still isn't quite there for the player. And that's really the development and the leap people have been calling for OG for a number of years. I'm kind of past the point of hoping for that leap to come, and I'm more focused on the less is more approach for OG, and that's exactly what we're getting this season. He's taking on a much more selective amount of these three-point opportunities because he can, because the Raptors offense is catering to his three-point numbers a little bit more this season, which isn't forcing him to find ways to get those shots. Other players are finding ways to give him those shots, which has allowed for this great efficiency from the start of the season from three. But shooting 55% from the field in general, the big difference is he's getting to the rim. OG is no longer just settling for that mid-range jumper. He's no longer settling for that step back deep two. He is getting to the rim. And it's not by his handles. It's not a player like Siakam or maybe even a player like Scotty Barnes who manufactures a way to get themselves to the rim. OG, it's just brute force. He's big. He's incredibly strong for his size. And we're giving him downhill lanes to fight his way to the rim. Not even really fight his way to the rim sometimes. Give him a full head of steam. Get him going downhill. And we're even employing this in the half court. We did so very effectively against the Mavericks, where he gets that full head of steam. He gets the ball with that full head of steam. And with him going to the rim with that size, that speed, that strength, it's going to be incredibly difficult to stop. Like, even on occasions going up against the opposition big, we'll call it, the opposition big in Dwight Powell, he got to the rim with ease, sometimes almost going through Dwight Powell to get there and finding that easy two. So the way in which the modern NBA offense remains efficient is with players like OG, these like incredibly elite role players, we'll call them. It's tough and unfortunate that we have to label OG in such a way where maybe we're calling him a role player, but it's just this elite role player. It's this 3-and-D plus type of player who is hyper efficient from the outside and provides such game-changing floor spacing to this team. But also, when it's not the three-point shooting for OG Anunoby, he's become so much more efficient with his interior game because he's no longer settling, using his athletic gifts, his athletic traits to make that offense so much easier to come by. And it's making a difference so far this season, and it's certainly made a difference in that game against the Dallas Mavericks. So we'll give the coaching a lot of credit for making this change, and we'll give OG Anunoby a lot of credit as well for accepting this change and accepting this sort of role here, because OG Anunoby, as much as he's maybe not been satisfied with his role in Toronto, it seems like it's been a year to 2 years at this point where we've had some conversations about that. OG has this understanding, or is at least starting to develop this understanding, that for him to be at his most impactful to this Raptors offense, it's the less is more approach. So even though he's not getting those individual isolation touches where sometimes he has to settle for a mid-range shot, he's getting the ball a whole lot more often, and he's getting it a whole lot more often in these very efficient scenarios where he's either getting to the rim or, more importantly, hitting those three-point shots. The most efficient shots you can take in the NBA. Well, number one, it's free throws. Number two is getting to the rim. Number three is corner threes. And OG seems to be a master of two of those things. The free throws as well aren't a problem for the player at all either. So OG turning into a game-changing player for the Raptors on the offensive end. We knew about the defense, but this new step on offense is massive for the player, and pains me to say is going to make him an incredibly lucrative player to bring back to the team if he does become a free agent at the end of the season. But that whole thing is a conversation for another day. What have you made to the changes for OG Anunoby's offense this season, how it's impacting the Raptors? Let me know your thoughts and opinions on the player in the comments down below. That's all for me today. Drop a like if you enjoyed. Smash that like button, everybody. Subscribe for more Raptors content. I'll see you next time for another video or maybe a watch party.